See, then I was.
I love our board too.
I do too.
Represent.
Yeah.
The reason I get up in the morning. All right, and I'm about to go live to Facebook, and then anyone watching on YouTube can obviously already see me fumbling with Facebook.
Just want to make sure. As it was recording, I was professing my love for those at whose pleasure I serve.
People who are just watching on YouTube are gonna be like, "Wait, what are you guys? What are you doing?"
It's interesting TV. So, love what?
All right, we are live on Facebook. We're recording. It all happened. It all came together. So, hello, Internet. Welcome back to Hudgens Talks. I'm Kate Driscoll. I'm the Hudgens Center Public Programs Manager, and I have my co-host. I'll let him introduce himself.
I am Ty Nicholson. I'm the Director of Studio and Facility Operations.
Ooh, fancy. And we have Joe Miranda here today. Thank you so much for coming on, Joe.
Thank you. For a moment, I was going to introduce myself in the co-host. I was like, oh, nope, not me.
So, Joe, for people who don't know you, will you tell people a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
So I am a web designer and UI designer for Dragon Army, which is a company in Atlanta. I worked with different companies as Delta, Honeybaked, Hi-Res, Karen Toffler, bunch of charities. So right now it's just a bunch of media work as a contractor at the moment. So, but it's great that I've in my past, I've owned a t-shirt company. I've went to Hollywood, worked in movies as a special effects artist, and went to SCAD and graduated with an interactive design and game development background. So, man of many talents.
Yeah, you're a Renaissance man.
Yeah. If it's art, I do it. And it's funny because even worked with, so when I was in SCAD, I had friends in fashion, I had friends in photography, in advertising. So it was great just to jump back and forth from different departments. And, I was part of making all the marketing material for the a SCAD fashion show for my friend who was one of the finalists. And Mono Balonic was there. He saw all the marketing materials and everything. It was great just to see all the characters of the fashion background. So it's been fun.
That is really cool. So yeah, you've had a really sort of diverse experiences in the art world.
Oh yes, very, very diverse. And it's interesting. I think going into all these different types of forms of arts, really composes the type of personality that you become, especially now with UI and web design, it starts to mix in with a lot of the advertising type of photography that you want, type of models that you're looking for and photos that you're looking for. So you really start to train your eye in a lot of things of trends that are coming, styles that are coming up. And even with the conceptual and special effects of just creating content that's immersive. In all my designs, I always try to create an immersive experience because that is something that we're moving towards in design. We're trying to create a culture in all designs at the moment, either be fashion, movies, or even just web design. That's just kind of the future of art at the moment. It's just the many aspects that you can dive into in creating what you create.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it's
so how?
Oh, go ahead. Uh-oh, she froze.
Oh no.
Oh, how did you get into art? Was something you've always Oh no, it says my internet connection is unstable. This is nonsense. It's not unstable. Don't you dare. No, I'm sorry. Ty, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Traditionally, when you think of a community arts center, we think of painting, drawing, all the, the kind of old fashioned stuff. Where do you think these newer mediums fit in, and where would you like to see digital arts kind of injected into community art centers in the future?
Well, and that I feel it's everything, you know. I feel like traditional and digital media is really coming together in a unique way. I feel that these are industries that you can really learn from all different types of backgrounds. You know, I feel as artists, we are representations of our experiences. You know, we can speak of certain areas and environments of where we grew up. I feel like for me, you know, both of my parents are Cuban. So a lot of the Cuban influence of art, of just lots of color, a lot of, I love the Santa Ana type of styles. And I love the dark, you know, dark art styles. And that's what actually got me very interested in the special effects and doing horror art and all those different types of facets. So it's really funny how when you grow up as an artist, you really start from early on, and it's just a combination of just generations of your life, and you just grow stronger. So I do believe that there is room in all facets of art. Yeah, as a pottery designer, you know, you really grasp the knowledge of structures, you know, and what is appealing in structures. That eye that you start to train can really transfer over into digitally very quickly. You know, layout, it's all about structure and alignments, and, you know, what really is appeasing to the eye. So it's funny how art is an industry and what's the word I'm looking for, but a craft, that's a word. A craft that just marries all. It really is the marriage between the eye and the hand, and, you know, how you use it, because even on computers, you're using your eyes and the capabilities of moving objects within the different types of programs that you're using on, and really making it the best as you can make it. So I feel like it's funny how every little facet of the art world really makes you stronger. Like, you know, I admire traditional artists because, you know, it's funny how certain areas of art, it's not forgiving. You know, I know like gouache painters and acrylic painters, it's very difficult to master the brush strokes. So it really is something that once you make a mistake, you know, some painters just keep on painting and they just paint a bunch of paintings and just one after the other. And then there's some that just rework it to the point that it creates perfection. So it's just something that I always find, like, one of my, I always ask her about her background as my aunt. My aunt just got back into, she studied art way back in when she was young. And now she's just getting back into painting. So she's doing like oil paintings. And it's funny, you see her with like, just like a praying mantis with two brushes, and she's there. And I'm there looking at her like, how? and that's how she does it. But it's funny how her line work is so perfect, and that's the way that she does it, that you really start to understand of that is the structure of how she does it, and you just have to find your structure within these industries. So that's why I support the Hudgens Center and online classes and everything, and I recommend anyone going into any class of arts, and even at any intermediate beginner of where you are, because you have to start somewhere, and you perfect your craft through experience and practice.
I was curious how you got into the arts. Is this something you've been doing since you were a kid? Did you get into it? I know you went to SCAD. So what was that journey like?
Yeah, well, okay. So it started with my mom. My mom, so she has an interesting story of how she wanted to go to college to be an interpreter, international interpreter for the UN. But back in that time, women were not considered to go to college. So she wanted to go to England, and her grandparents said, we're not going to pay for it if you go to that college in England. So she said, okay, then I'm not going. So she started going into art, and she started painting. And even when we grew up, my mom was painting everything, you know, wall murals and these huge paintings and drawings and charcoal. And, you know, as a kid, I was always surrounded by these things. And, you know, my sister, she's 8 years older. So my sister would always be that sibling that would like, don't talk to me, I'm with my friends. So I always wanted to be a part of it, that I was the kid that was imaginative, that was making Power Rangers and like jungle and lava rocks. And I was by myself in a corner being like, oh no, the tentacles. So I started making a log of all the monsters that I would interact with. And, you know, I started creating sketchbooks, and sketchbooks started to create like encyclopedias. And that's when, so in high school, I was very much into the art world. I did some charity work with working for an art museum in Rhode Island, because I went to a boarding school there. And so from there, I went to a counselor in high school, and they said, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I want to be a doctor that does art. And they're like, that doesn't exist. So they said, here, the best school is Loyola University in Chicago. So I went in with a business and marketing major, hated it, failed it, horrible, like got a 20 on a test. Like, that's when I was like, that's not the world for me. And I started doing graphic design. So this is like at the period that consoles were becoming big, you know, Nintendo 64, PlayStation. And I was absorbed. I was like that kid playing till like late hours of the night, playing video games. And that's when my family was like, you should go into gaming. So I applied for different schools. I got accepted to RISD for a graphic design major, but not gaming. So, and then I went to SCAD and got in. I went to SCAD for 4 years for the interactive design game development, and that, you know, it sparked the journey into the art world that would go into all these different types of facets. But that's truly what started it, was my mom's, you know, rebellious and just doing art as a hobby at the home. And she does everything. She does interior design, she does a floral design, you name it. And you ask her to this day that everybody talks to her and says, can you do the interior design for me? She's like, no, I'm not talented. And we're all looking at her like, really? So I've been trying to get her a business. So that's on the workings.
So you started your first like artistic projects, like imagining monsters, but then you've done work with special effects, right?
Yeah, so that
monster love never end.
Yeah, it never ended. And it's funny because, so after college, in Atlanta in the gaming world was not very developed. You know, there was a lot of companies, high res, CPU back in the time. And I worked for a company called Songster, doing Facebook games. So I did that for a little while, but the company didn't survive very long. So afterwards, I started a t-shirt company. So I did that for 3 years. That it actually was a contestant for the Shark Tank, which was huge. You know, the producers called me, I got accepted. They sent my production release forms and everything. But unfortunately, a lawyer looked it up and she said, you know, do you have your trademarks, your copyrights? And that was something that I didn't have. So she said, like, listen, I don't recommend it. So after that, I had my best friend, her boss called me and they needed a little project. So I did this little project. She called me in and she loved my t-shirt company, that she took me under her wing and really showed me the boutique store and the fashion industry and how it worked. And, you know, it wasn't the life for me. I saw how much pressure that you have to wear, you know, with the many hats, and especially owning a business. You know, one thing I will always recommend, if you love the art side, find a business person. If you love the business side, find an art person. You know, don't wear all the hats. You know, learn to know your strengths and know your weaknesses and find people that can do your weaknesses. So, you know, it's funny, at that period in my life, I was completely lost. And it took my best friend that said, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do a project. You're going to do 3 things that you've been dying to do and just do it. So I told her, I said, I want to do another company. She's like, okay, do it. I was like, I don't want to do a game. She's like, okay, we're going to do it. I'm like, and I want to do a fashion. She's like, yeah, do it. I was like, okay, we're going to do it. And then later on, I came back and I go, you know what? I don't want to do fashion. I want to do special effects. I want to do monster makeups. I want to do Halloween makeups and everything. She's like, okay, go for it. So one of my first collections was I redesigned the Alice in Wonderland world as horror, you know. So the concept is that Queen of Hearts was this queen demon, and you entered into this mirror world by the Cheshire Cat, which was a representation of the Grim Reaper. And so, you know, you would go into the different worlds of the Mad Hatter, the twins, the Tweedledee and Tweedledum were conjointed twins. And there was like biomechanicals inside the belly with like the guy coming out of the belly and everything. So, you know, I loved the project so much that I started looking for schools in Toronto, in LA. And that's when I went to cinema makeup school, where I started working with, you know, oh my God, Michael Spatola, V. Neil, which are artists that have worked on Avengers, Alice in Wonderland, Edward Scissorhands, which was an amazing experience to work, you know, with them and just see their experiences. You know, I don't know if you guys have seen Face Off, but all the Face Off contestants, you know, would come in and out and we would have drinks and, you know, meet their friends and ask about their experiences of their show. And it's fascinating. And that's where going back to the question that Ty asked, you know, of seeing the different aspects of art. It's so funny how, you know, I would have never in a million years thought I would ever get into that industry. But when you do, it's fascinating that you see these artists that are borderline scientists. You know, they work with all these different types of materials, including silicone, telesis, and Prozaid. And it's funny how we're talking about that this is things that were created in the 80s and 90s. You know, Prozaid was an adhesive that they used for amputees. And there was a Canadian special effects artist that used it for Legend of the Falls, I believe, was one of the first few films that he started using the Prozaid technique. And it's fantastic, you know. So just going into that world and just meeting all these people, and I mean, like, these are situations that we're talking about a $50,000 drop that these producers give. And they're like, okay, we want this within a month. And you see how like 2 weeks before that they have to showcase this beautiful makeup, something happens that like a mold breaks or something didn't come out. And so, you know, as a person coming in that knows nothing, I'm there like, it's the end of the world. Like, and they're like, no, you just need duct tape, a clamp, and cement. We're good. And you're just there like, what? But it's just fascinating just to see these unspoken heroes of these movies. And, I worked as an intern for Legacy, which is a special effects company. And they were working on Guardians of the Galaxy. So we saw the makeup of what's that movie with the fish like water, Shape of Water. Mm-hmm. So I saw the makeup of Shape of Water before it came out. And I kid you not, it's exactly like the movie. You're there just like wanting to touch it like all the time. You're like, oh, this is so good. And they're working on the guy with all the tattoos, the body modification. I forgot his name from the Guardians of the Galaxy. But anyway, they were working on yeah, you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, the guy that plays Drax.
Yes,
he was like a wrestler or something before he was an actor.
Yes, Drax. So on Drax, all his tattoos, I saw them doing all the Prozaid transfers. So it's basically like a glue, and they basically have to paint these huge sheets of these prostate transfers, which are basically glue, and they're painting them. Oh, it's fascinating that you're there. You're just, you know, those people that hover behind you and you like literally like, hello? Yeah, that was me. I was the one hovering behind them like.
Oh, that is really, really cool. So like you brought up an interesting point about sort of like the unsung heroes of like the movie industry, like special effects specifically. Can you speak more to that about just all the work that people do behind the scenes that we just may not notice?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and bringing it back to the digital world, now that I'm in, you know, working digital, it's funny how a website, you know, the amount of work behind a website, behind a logo, you know, people don't realize what goes in, you know, and we have clients coming in and out just being like, I need a logo. It'll take you an hour. And it's like, no, you know, now you have to talk about what does the logo represent? Is it representative? You know, when you're thinking about branding, there's a reason why huge brands like Nike, Starbucks, Coke, Pepsi have lasted so long. You know, you see that a mile away and you grabs your attention. You know, it's funny, McDonald's, the reason why they did the golden arches and they chose yellow was because when you're driving down at night, when you see the M, and that's all you need. That's when you know that there's a McDonald's. So they knew that that was a huge marketing material that they could use to use the golden M as representation of what that location represented. So the thought process behind all this, you know, is not just one person. This is like a team of 5 to even 20 people all doing marketing research, doing multiple faceted different projects and experimentation that a client just picks 1 out of 10, you know, or 1 of 5. It depends on the project. So it's fascinating how just recently, you know, special effects world, unfortunately for me, it's an industry that not a lot of money's in it. And, you know, especially going into school, they always say, you know, a lot of the problems that's happening is that a lot of artists are coming in and they're working for really, really cheap. And they don't know their self-worth. You know, they don't put themselves on a high bench and saying, I'm worth this much. And we're talking about, you know, minimum wage. They're going even lower than minimum wage. So it's really sad to see that this industry, you know, if we all stuck together as artists, you know, this wouldn't be a problem. But anyway, this was a situation that I had to move into the industry of the digital arts. I started working with a friend of mine that owns an advertising company. And he literally, him and I just came together and would just flat out, you know, work out all these different types of clients and produce logos. And I had another friend of mine who works at Dragon Army. His name's Michael Stanley. Hopefully we can do an artist talk with him. He's fascinating. He literally gave me an opportunity and was like, okay, you know, you don't have much experience and everything, but are you willing to try? And I said, yeah. And he's like, okay, I'm throwing you in the deep end. If you sink or swim, you sink or swim. You know, here's the program, which I knew nothing about, you know, and here's a project, which I knew nothing about. And he's like, you got a week and here's your deadline. And, you know, it's funny how that's what makes the difference between a good artist and a great artist. A good artist, you know, gives up. A great artist, you know, says, no, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to research. I'm going to do it and do it and do it again. You know, I'm going to challenge accepted. I think artists are the people that don't give up. You know, that they go into all industries and all affects and they don't give up. You know, they always come back. So, and that's what happened. I YouTubed the crap out of it. And, you know, it's funny how now I'm super advanced in those programs. And, you know, now it's to the point that I'm working on projects of Delta and, you know, high-res and all these different things with ease and confidence. I feel that when I always say the hardest projects you will ever encounter are the ones that you will learn the most out of. You know, I always say you learn 10,000 lessons from failure, but nothing from success, you know. And it's very, very true. You know, I feel like an artist is always very hard on themselves of saying, oh, it's not good enough. But it's funny, find out what's not good enough and practice it, you know. And I always say, you know, sharpen your weaknesses, you know. Phil Scad was great at always telling us, you always have to live in a T formation, you know everything, but be specialized in one thing.
You bring up a good point about artists working for low wages, and you know, traditionally artisans or craftspeople are woefully underpaid, but it's a tough call to make when you're fresh out of school and you're wanting and you're hungry to work on a project, and someone gives you this opportunity. You know, they'll pay you an experience, but there's also the relationship between companies and universities where they get a lot of free work out of interns for credit and experience. So when you're coming out of school and they're like, hey, will you create my logo for my shipping company that I'm starting up at, you know, I can pay you like $50. You're like, what, as what you were saying, it's like, whoa, it's much more than just, you know, putting like a dude with a thumbs up. You know, we got to like the fundamentals design to think about and all these other things. And like what you said, like, what's the whole kind of philosophy behind your company? Like, how can we make this product, this emblem, stand out and stick into people's minds? And so when, you know, young artists are coming in, it's a hard decision to make. It's like whether they take the low paying graphic design job and start working on their portfolio a little bit, or not, and continue like not working in their field and, you know, tending bar, which is completely fine as well, but it's like whatever you need to do. So
tough choices.
It's a tough choice. And it's like, it's like they always tell you portfolio. If you don't have a portfolio because you're not taking these crap paying jobs, it's like, what do you, and you're competing with thousands upon thousands of graphic designers too.
Right. Who wants it the most? And might be in a position to take those jobs over somebody else.
Right.
It comes into play too.
And I'll tell you two things. I think there were two lessons that I learned over time. One, I was two friends that really taught me confidence. You know, when you have a person that says, I'm going to give you $50, you have to have the confidence of being like, no, 100. You know, it's so funny how I had these two friends. I was a type of person, like you were saying, that they would say $50, $40, and I would even go like, oh, don't worry about it, I'll do it for free. You know, it's pro bono, it's for my portfolio, you're doing me a favor, you know. And I'll tell you that I would get frustrated that, and I mean these two friends of mine that are not the best artists at all by far, but they would have the confidence that they would just say it was 100 and they would produce crap. And you're there looking like, how? And it's the confidence. And it really is something of the only answer that they can say is no. And they would have to find someone cheaper. The reason why they're giving you that price is because you are immediate, instant gratification. They don't know anybody else. They're just throwing out a number. If you fight and say 100, they say, oh, that's too expensive. You know what, I'll give you a deal, $90, you know, or you start going down from there, but you always have to start up and work your way down. You know, that is something that it's really hard, and you're so nervous. The few times that I've had to do it, I swear I had like cotton mouth. I'm like sweating profusely. I'm literally like, oh my God, I think I lost a client. And you'll see how a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't know. Oh, okay, here's $100. I don't mind giving $100. And it's so crazy how it really is, you know, the artists themselves that really just accept what someone else tells them what they're worth. And that I'll tell you, as any artist, and at the beginning or once you've graduated, you know, bring it up as much as possible. The second thing is, if you do take a client, I would even suggest, you know, all these companies and clients that are very difficult, not worth the $50. You know, I'll tell you, I've had a lot of cheap clients that give me a roundabout and haven't paid nothing. And it's not even worth my portfolio stuff, that I'm like, you know, why did I even take that project? But however, I would tell you, go to charities, communities, there are so many communities and charities that need the advertisement, that need the help. And it's things that you would want to do and that they want to like help you. You know, it's so funny how there are more companies that you can find that can align to your style and align to what you want to do. And I think that that is the key, you know, really finding the perfect client for you as a beginner artist that would fit in your portfolio as you go. You know, that I have to say is something that I've learned as I've gotten older and learned through a lot of mistakes of accepting a lot of low paying clients or clients that have been very difficult that I have stashed away their work and it wasn't even worth it. That I'm like, oh, well, you know, but I don't get me wrong. I feel all experiences in the end point, you know, are worth it. But I would say that that is the best way of really raising up of pricing range. You know, I feel like the art world, there's no wrong answer. There's just experience.
Right. No, you're exactly right. And I think that's something I don't know about in the graphic design education programs, that they don't teach a lot of negotiating, business classes or anything like that. And I think artists really need to think about that, especially coming in.
Absolutely. And I think networking just in general, you know, it's funny how I feel all artists, some artists, I would speak for some, you know, some artists are very shy, you know, and they don't feel that their work is good enough. For me, I was always that type of artist that I didn't like showing my work because it wasn't to the style that I wanted. You know, I felt that there was room for improvement. But it's funny how there's always room for improvement, you know? And so it's worrying and never taking off. And it's funny how a lot of times it's best to take off and learn as you go. And I recommend for anyone, you know, just take off and learn as you go. It is the best way. It really is something that you learn as you go. And I do recommend, this is something I've been talking for years, that I do believe that schools should implement this in their curriculum of networking classes, you know, going to events. And it's funny how the things that you need are available in the palm of your hand, you know, especially in the digital world. Atlanta Tech Village does every Friday, I believe, is a luncheon. And basically everyone from the tech world and newcomers from the tech world are creating apps and creating games and everything, actually go to these events. And it's a great networking event to pass down your business cards, to have conversations, to be the front runner and knowing these things that are coming out. And it's funny, the more you know, the more events you go, the more you can have conversation to other people that are in the industry. And they're like, oh yeah, I didn't know about that. Or I didn't know about that talk. Or I did see that talk on YouTube. It's funny how you when you're young, you see the community being this huge expanse that's so big that you're like, oh my God. As you're older and you get in, you're like, oh no, it's very small.
So it sounds like your advice for like up and coming creative professionals would be to be hungry for it, but to know your worth.
Oh yeah.
So maybe finding that balance.
Absolutely. You know, I know like in the gaming world, GDC is a huge thing to go to. I went twice and it was a great experience. You know, and it's funny because I went with my best friend who was very much into the indie game world. So he really introduced me to all these indie companies. And it's funny that all those people that I met are in huge companies now, in Apple, in Zynga, in CPU, well, no, sorry, Hi-Res. And it's funny how like everything's connected. The more connections you make, you're growing with them. You know, it's funny how every single person has their own journey and it is all connected. And not to be afraid to reach out to them and being like, hey, I heard you're working at this place. Can you give me advice? Or could you look at my portfolio? It's funny how and I understand I am an artist that I'm always afraid to ask for a job. I'm not that person to be like, hey, there's a job available in your company. Can you get it for me? You know, I feel I'm a shy person when it comes to that. But, you know, there is middle ground of looking at my work and giving me advice, you know, looking at my portfolio and give me advice. And it's funny how those are kind of the little stepping stones forward for even them to say, hey, I do have a job position if you're interested. Mm-hmm. And that, let me tell you, is the way to get jobs now. You know, it is. I had a counselor that it's fascinating how she would always say that you can send out all your resumes and they can say no. You know, don't take it to heart. It's no for now. It's not no forever. And, you know, that was a huge mind-blowing idea that when she said that to me, because I was like, you're right. You know, it isn't no forever. It is no for now. And that's truly the art world. You know, you get better, you reapply. And now in your interview, they say, you know, what makes you important? What makes you, that famous question, how are you of value to our company? And by you saying, well, I applied in 2011, I applied in 2012, 15, 17, 19, and now I'm applying this year. And I hope you accept me because I think I am an asset to your company. You better believe as any boss or anyone would be like, I think it's time.
I also wanted to ask you, so you're a Hudgens Board Member.
Yes.
So I'm curious, and I've actually wanted to ask you this for a while. So what drew you to helping out art nonprofits? What was the appeal for you?
It's funny, Kate was the first one, a friend of mine from SCAD. So I met Kate, another board member, at my first class in SCAD. And it was drawing class. She was my right-hand woman that literally said, I want to be your friend. I was like, I want to be your friend. And that was done. Match made in heaven. We were friends for years. And we've been still friends after I've moved everywhere. And so she told me about the Hudgens, and she told me to come and visit. And I did. And she even asked me, do you want to be a part of the board? And I was fascinated by it because I took it as an opportunity. And like what Ty was asking about these classes of teaching networking and everything, there are no schools that teach that. You know, there are no schools that are doing newer majors or classes or even information. And so, you know, here in Atlanta, when it comes to like the makeup world and even meeting people, you have to know the right people and the right channels to get into that world. So really, I saw the Hudgens as this platform that was perfect to have artists to talk. And I thought it was like it was a safe space. You know, it's funny is Hudgens is your happy place. That was a huge campaign just recently that I saw. And it's very true. When I went there, it was a happy place. It is a place of imagination and beginning at whatever age. You know, I feel like big colleges, art colleges, there's this stigma of, you know, I'm too old to go back to school. And it's funny, you're never too old. I guess I have two parents that have always taught me, you're never too old, you're always young. I want to dance, I want to do this, I want to do that. So I see the Hudgens as that place that is you're never too old, and you can learn these knowledges and see these paintings and talk to these artists. And it's something local. You know, I feel like there's the High Museum and there's the Moda. And the Moda is fantastic. I love the Moda. But the High, I will say, is very traditional and very consistent of the same thing over and over and over and over. And so I feel the Hudgens is more like the Moda, that it's new. Everything's new and always evolving. And that's what art is about. Art is ever evolving. It's ever adapting. And so I love that, knowing that. I swear, you know, when Kate said you want to be about this opportunity and help the arts, I think it's any artist a dream to help get other artists within the industry. And especially with my background that has had so many art backgrounds, for me, I was like, yes, anywhere I can help, I would love to help and help that right now in today's day and age, the arts are kind of dying out, especially in school systems. It's not something that's really being concentrated on, which is funny because it's something that the world is moving towards. We're moving more towards the digital media world, especially now with Corona, more people are working from home. More people are using marketing online. They say that 50% of businesses right now don't have a website, which is crazy to think that we live in a day that's the first thing you do when someone says,
right.
oh, I have a business. What's your website? And then you judge them on their website.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is not a
true.
good website. Looks like a scam.
Right. Yeah. And they could be, fabulous, but
yeah, exactly.
But that's my first thing I do. I do the same thing. Like before I even go to a store, I Google it to see what the hours are, and I check out the website and I see what's what. And if I can't pull it up, I'm like, okay, what can I pull up?
Absolutely. And it's funny because even the user experience, when you go to a website, it's absolutely beautiful and you can't even find where to purchase the thing. And you're there like clicking around, like, where's the Easter egg button? Like, is it hidden? Like, and this is something of like, I can, I always, my parents, that were not raised in the internet world, if I have a problem where I was raised in the internet world, I can just imagine that, it's crazy how even I, who has grown up with it, it's so ever evolving that even I have trouble of like, what do I do? What button do I press? It's just crazy. And that's why I say the arts are becoming very important now, and it is the future. And it's every form of art now, and that's the crazy idea that now, you can be a traditional artist, but to sell, the best way to do it is online now, and it's funny, now you can make a living of just being an artist. Like before, it was difficult. You had to make friends with the gallery owners. You had to have a sponsor or a buyer that bought your artwork and made your name and released a press release. Not anymore. Now you become viral. You make a YouTube video and then you're viral, and now your paintings go from 60 to 300, but they're selling by the millions. You can write a book, put it on Wattpad for $1. You have 100,000 followers. That's $100,000 you just made. It's just mind blowing of the opportunities that have been made just in the past half decade that haven't been exploited at this moment because the knowledge is not there. People just don't know. So it really is just fascinating of just where we are in today's generation, and to pass that knowledge to young kids, high school students and even college, even our age. It doesn't matter what age, just to pass down knowledge. I think that that's what makes us, the most important creature in the animal kingdom. That's what makes us unique. We pass knowledge to the next generation for them to get things faster. It is really fascinating to think that we are the composition of just knowledge throughout the years that have just created a cell phone. This is everything. All the cameras in the world into one thing that evolved into that. All the computers we've had evolved into this. All the social media, all the internet has composed into this. All the things that we've had that back in the 80s, we had floppy disks that were huge, and like computers were big boxes and everything. And now it's in the palm of our hand. It's just fascinating that everything is a composition of just knowledge.
And that thing is not going away. That small box is forever going to be part of our daily lives.
Oh, yeah.
And you totally hit the nail on the head, is that an online presence or a great website is like almost as important as the product for a business, because like kind of gone are the days now, especially with the pandemic, are these huge, let's say like Dogwood Festival like things where a lot of craftspeople would go and sell their wares and make their nut for 6 months. And the ACC, like that was already starting to dwindle years ago. Like the numbers started dropping and dropping and dropping because not as many people are going to these places to buy their silver bangles or whatever. They're looking online and having a easily navigatable, I can't say the right word.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, a good website and a pleasing website is like a huge part. And like, you're right, like going viral, like that will make your crappy pottery like sell 10 times as fast. But the question is like, how do you go viral? There's a way to go viral, like almost, but you probably don't want to do it. And then there's other, you don't want to be a pariah. You don't want to be like the wrong way to go viral.
Well, and it's funny, it goes full circle. I feel the ways to go viral is networking. That's truly the key of it. I feel anything online now, the secret to it is you grab a bunch of rocks in your hand and you throw it. And if one hits, oh, you made it. If you get 50 people to come to your website, woo, that was a good thing. And it's really that, contacting influencers, contacting it used to be Tumblr was a big thing, or Etsy, or, you just really making relationships and promoting each other. We're really in the day and age of supporting each other as other artists, hey, check out my friend. And then they do the same, or even like going traveling. I feel any experience of opening up a window to your perspective, people are interested. You have people niche that are interested, and keeping consistent. If you post once a month, no one's going to remember you. It's like you have to keep consistent of every day of doing something you love and proud of, So for me, like one of the things that I love that gets me a lot of good followers, and I love it, which I've been super bad lately, it's horrible, but is traveling. I love traveling. I've done China, I've done Thailand, Cambodia, Amsterdam, London. I've traveled all over, and let me tell you, it really, that's another thing that creates perspective, and it's funny how you don't even have to travel across an ocean to get new perspective. Just going for a hike, Georgia, North Georgia, Brasstown Ball, or a Blood Mountain Overlook, you see how insignificant we kind of are in the grand scheme of the earth. That's really inspiring. It really is something seeing on top of a mountain and seeing how like you're here and then there's all that and it's like all these different types of blues, and here we're blessed to be in Georgia that we have the season, so now you can go 4 times a year and it's always something different, never the same. That for me, it just creates inspiration. It's funny, I don't know if you guys know about the cornerstones here in Georgia, that there's like this cornerstone that was created by some person that was random, and it has like this like a scripture that nobody knows about. It's funny how I found it online and I actually went, and it's actually really cool. It's one of these like, roadside thing, like the big potato, but it was kind of cool that the experience of just going and finding the beauty about nothing it really creates bigger boxes. I even see like inspiration now that we're going into macro photography of insects, seeing the scales and seeing like what our skin looks like. That, one show that I love that's just fascinating, I recommend anybody to see, is One Strange Rock. Fascinating show, really puts things in perspective of how everything's connected and just the expanse of what's out there. it really makes a lot of problems in your life look really insignificant. That you're like, I'm so pissed I got rained on. And then you're like, you know what? Not that big of a deal.
All right, I've got to acknowledge what's happening in the chat. We had way back Michael Aschenbrenner, who was on, says hi, and then Ashley Lynch wanted to let us know. By the way, hi Ashley. Ashley Lynch always watches.
Yeah.
She corrected us and said it's Dave Bautista is who we were trying to think of that plays Drax, and Michael Aschenbrenner one-upped her and said David Michael Bautista Jr.
Ooh.
So thank you guys.
Thank you. See, I knew someone would name the name like that one.
But that is all the time we have. I just want to say to you, Joe, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your career with us. And I think this will be a really nice thing for some younger artists to watch and older artists to watch. And just some really great food for thought.
I'll share it too. I'll do the sharing. So let's start throwing some rocks.
And to one up Kate, thank you for coming on, and thank you for all you do for the Hudgens as well.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for inviting me. I love these kind of things. It just, it just reminds me of that there's a lot of artists out there that we go through the same thing, that we're not alone, so. And next time I have to show my work. So that's another thing, because I didn't even get to that point to show the whole evolution.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we'll have to make like a little album so we can like link it or something.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay, we'll do that. Okay, that'll be great.
Right. Well, goodbye, Facebook. We will see you next time.
Bye, y'all.
All right. We are no longer live. Is the live thing off for you guys?
Yeah.
And
oh, it looks like it's still